Hello and welcome to another episode of Sales and Pepper Interviews. Today we have another English episode and I'm very happy to have David Ledger here from Seismic. Hello and welcome, David.
Hi, thanks for having me, Dominic. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. David, for the people out there that don't know you yet and haven't met you on the Artist Circus, you have been one of our speakers this year. Really cool topic that you were talking about. And this is also the topic that we want to pick up for today's podcast episode, because I think it's not only relevant for pre-sales, but also for sales team. And the topic will be why pre-sales is the secret ingredient to accurate revenue forecasting.
Yeah, indeed.
I would like you to explain, like, what does it mean? Like, what is the topic about? And maybe you can give us a little bit of a background from yourself. Like, what are you doing at Seismic?
Sales Teams aufgepasst. Kennt ihr schon Dealfront? Wenn ihr genug habt von der mühsamen Suche nach Entscheidern, dann ist Dealfront genau das Richtige für euch. Nutzt europaweite Daten in mehreren Sprachen, um genau die richtigen Leads zu finden und Deals abzuschließen. Dank DSGVO-konformer Daten und smarten Funktionen wie Website-Besuchererkennung oder Trigger-Events seid ihr immer einen Schritt voraus. Probiert noch heute die kostenlose Demo aus und hebt eure Vertriebsstrategie aufs nächste Level. Mehr Infos in den Shownotes oder auf www.dealfront.com. Und jetzt viel Spaß mit der Folge.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Seismic. Seismic is a sales enablement technology company, and I'm the regional VP of sales engineering there. So I have a very talented team that cover our European and APAC markets. We have a team in UK, Germany, France, and Australia. And yeah, what the topic I had for the Artist Circus was really about how pre-sales teams have a lot of information about the deals that they're working on. And oftentimes they are kind of shut out from the forecast, whether intentionally or unintentionally, which I think is a big miss for revenue leaders, because their information and insights can really help you in terms of the chances for a deal to close in a certain time frame. So that was my my topic at the Artist Circus, and we'll get into it today, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great topic as well, because I think not many companies I know have a pre-sales team by now, but I think many of them actually do revenue forecasting, right? I think forecasting, one of the skills nowadays, it's becoming more and more important in these times. So I think maybe putting it a bit in a bigger picture will be a very interesting topic that we can dive into. But maybe for those who don't have a pre-sales team yet, what would you say, David? Why do you need a pre-sales team, or when is a good time to implement a pre-sales team in a
great
company?
Question. So for all the startup founders out there, what is pre-sales and why should you have it? Well, pre-sales is an interesting kind of catch-all name. You probably hear people having the title sales engineering or solution consulting, or there's lots of titles in the industry. And I guess the role originally, as the name kind of implies, sales engineering is basically an engineer, a software engineer that somebody picked up and then put in the sales team, because they realized that at a certain point in a sales cycle, somebody has to explain how the technology actually works. And so that was the genesis of the role many years ago, I guess. But it's evolved a lot from just simply being a technical expert within the sales team to being much more a business value focused role. And so that's where a lot of pre-sales professionals' time is spent in explaining the value and explaining how the technology is going to really solve challenges. And usually that's through product demonstrations, or it can be through doing workshops with a prospect, or many other ways. But generally that's what people in pre-sales do. So I think, I would be biased, but I think once you have at least one salesperson, you should probably look at hiring at least one pre-salesperson. Depends on what you sell, of course, but I think that explaining the value and explaining how the technology is really going to work within a company and within their tech stack, within their landscape, that's going to solve their business challenges, that's something that you should be doing right from the start, really.
Yeah, I think this exactly what's also getting more and more important in the demos. It's not about only your own product, but also understanding what other products are out there and how does our product fit in this whole like life cycle or of SaaS tools out there, and connecting the different dots, right? I think that's something many sellers understand their own product and know how to sell it. But I think when it comes to also the other products out there, you need to have a good understanding about how this fits in and how you connect the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ecosystem within which your SaaS technology lives is almost as important as the product itself, right? Nobody will buy a technology that's not going to integrate to anything, that's not going to speak with other tools, draw data, interact, whatever it needs to do. And a sales engineer or a pre-sales professional is the person usually tasked with explaining how that's going to work and the reason why and the value to doing it, right? A classic question that a sales engineer might get is, okay, we have 10 tools in our sales tech stack. How do you integrate with them, and what do those integrations do? And so a classic thing that you would have to do then is think, well, first of all, do you really want to integrate with all 10? Does it make sense? And if you do, which are the most valuable? Because integrations take time, and if they're customized in some way, they take money. So what's the most value add, and how should that process look? So that's a classic kind of pre-sales or sales engineering topic to get into.
Yeah. And I think that's also a good point, because I was selling myself for over 10 years, and I think you're always looking from your own perspective, right? And if you have like 10 demos and 10 times you hear, okay, this product is very important, we need an integration, it feels like this is the way to go. But there's like maybe 10, 15 other sellers out there, and they have different answers to that question. So for yourself, it might seem to be like, okay, this is product A where we need to build the API for. But normally a company also have like limited capacity when it comes to building these integrations, right? So I think also this whole gathering the data and like using the data to make the right decision, it's also something very, very important. Yeah.
And that's another thing that I think you'll find in pre-sales generally, is that you also find people who've worked in the client industry who then come onto the technology side and work in pre-sales, because those topics about what to integrate with, how to integrate with, are often also defined by the way that the industry that you're selling to operates. So if you're selling a lot to a logistics company or to a financial services company, very, very helpful to have someone in your pre-sales team who has real world experience in that industry, because they very much understand how things need to work and why they need to work that way.
Yeah,
I think it's much the same in sales, in fact, but in pre-sales you have that slightly more like technical lens on it.
When it comes to revenue forecasting, David, what, like, let's maybe start right in the beginning. Like, what would you say, like, what are the key components that make an accurate revenue forecast? Like, what do you need to focus on to have an accurate forecasting model?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the thing is that you can analyze so much data. I mean, there's a lot of data in your CRM system. There's a lot of data in all kinds of other tools that you're probably using that can help you with forecasting. I think the main thing about forecasting is that you need to be accurate, as accurate as possible, but you also need to have a way to look at leading indicators that can tell you if something is going to happen way in advance of it happening, right? Because you're trying to predict, at the start of the quarter, you probably try to predict what your revenues will be at the end of that quarter. That's 3 months away. A lot can happen in 3 months.
Yeah.
But if certain things are not happening in those deals at that point, 3 months away, then you can probably say with some certainty that there is a risk on either the timing or the value of the deal that you're trying to push. And I think this is where pre-sales comes in a lot, because we have a different perspective, let's say, to our sales counterparts on the way that deals can be viewed, which is often a bit overlooked, I would say, in the forecasting process.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also, like, looking back to my own career, honestly, like, a lot of years, my revenue forecast was just gut feeling, right? Because I hadn't any frameworks in the previous companies, and I learned how to use frameworks at Pleo, where we used Medic, for example. And then we also had we implemented this, we called it big deal review. So we actually every team brought two of their biggest deals, and then there was the whole C-level involved in this, and also one sales engineer that we this role was invented newly in Pleo back then. So but it helped a lot, because then you had really as you said, main questions that you maybe just overlooked, but they're super important to close the deal, right? So I think having this expertise in these kind of calls, and all this knowledge in one case is really valuable to actually close the deal, and it helped a lot to drive things forward.
Yeah. And I think a framework, a kind of a deal inspection framework like Medic could be very, very useful. Often though, what I find with a lot of kind of deal inspection frameworks or sales frameworks like that is that they are often quite based on the mechanics of the deal, which is definitely important. How the salesperson is actually going to get a path to close, usually through a mutual action plan of some kind. But the pre-sales team might have a slightly separate angle on things, right? So the pre-sales team have a very, very sensitive handle on things like competition risk. So yes, you might believe that your deal shows great value and is really going to solve a big challenge for your customer, and they agree that the budget is within their constraints and everything like that. But is there any reason why you can do that uniquely versus your competition, right? That's sometimes something that the account executive might, in my experience at least, overlook. And another one, again, is talking about that topic we just talked about with integrations, is about kind of technical complexity, because it's one thing to explain the value and to see for the customer to see how it's going to really solve their challenges. But if it's going to be very difficult to make that work technically, that could jeopardize the deal and add risk to the deal. And that's also something that sales teams sometimes don't pay attention to particularly. So I think those kind of things can be really valuable contributions from your pre-sales team in the revenue forecasting process.
Yeah, and also preventing churn, right? I think that's also a big one, because it's getting more and more important, especially if you're talking to customer success leaders. It's how can we reduce our churn rates? And I think, as you mentioned, I think the main problem I see in the market is that sellers always are incentivized by just closing the deal, right? And on the other hand, you have this CS team, which is incentivized by trying to reduce the churn rate. But if you bring these two pieces together, you have a team like a pre-sales team that are actually working for both teams in a way. I think this is how it should be, bringing teams together and working on one common goal, and not everyone individually for his own.
Yeah, and I think this is a big topic currently, actually, in the SaaS world about. I think the term pre-sales probably does us a bit of a disservice, because it doesn't factor in the work that we actually do on the customer success side and actually the value realization side of things, right? I mean, a lot of SaaS companies, Seismic included, we very rarely maximize the size of a deal in the first initial transaction, very rarely. So really what you find is it's a land and expand model, and the pre-sales team should be engaged throughout. It's not like you do the first deal and then you just leave it alone. You built all those relationships, you built the trust. Why would you just leave it? It doesn't make any sense. And I think there's a lot of work to be done on the not just reducing churn, but also helping customers find new use cases and finding more value that they should wish to expand. The pre-sales role doesn't stop there. And I think one of the things that I push my team on is to try and think a bit more account-centric rather than opportunity-centric, right? Really trying to think about the customer as a whole rather than just the individual kind of deals that might be on the table at that time, which is a bit of a shift for some people, but it's very worthwhile to do that.
Yeah. How do you this is the one question that I'm asking myself a lot, is how do you measure success in pre-sales? Because what you just mentioned, in sales, normally you will be measure it on the deal value, right? So if you bring in the deal, but then you have someone from pre-sales jumping in and maybe like who's canceling the deal or say, hey, this deal will not come or will not close because of XYZ. So sometimes you also have this kind of friction between the teams, even though they should be like one team, right, and working on the same goal. So I think like this question is also like how to measure success for pre-sales and also make sure that they are looked at as an asset for the sales team and not like an enemy, right? So I think this is like two questions I have, like how do you make sure that it's working well?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in the industry there's quite a range of the way that pre-sales teams are compensated, but to my mind there should always be an individual quota component on a sales engineer, because that really aligns the sales team and the pre-sales team. I mean, usually the split of kind of base to commission is not as commission heavy as it would be for an account executive role. But there should definitely, in my opinion, be a individual component, because that removes that friction that you were just talking about there, where because we're incentivized on the same thing, right? We are incentivized still on net new ARR, basically. Now, some pre-sales teams also have like team components in their packages, which I think is a fair thing to do, because oftentimes the pre-sales team is working as a team. There's lots of specialist overlays sometimes. There are lots of people from that team who will help. It's not just one individual. And so there's a team component. Some pre-sales teams go completely team-based, and some have an individual component. But in my opinion, most times you should have that individual component to remain kind of aligned with the account executives and with the sales team on the goal, right? It's still a sales role, it's still a sales role. It's not a completely consulting role, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also, like looking back to Pleo, I think that the whole forecasting topic got more and more important when you're trying to like go public with the company and trying to reach an IPO, because then you are not allowed to have more than 5% inaccuracy in your forecasting, right? Because as soon as you go public, and I think that's like the benchmark for many SaaS companies, is like this 5% model. And honestly, I haven't met many companies that are doing well here. I think especially when it comes to forecasting, you have like a huge gap between what is being forecasted and what actually the revenue is that's coming in. Is there any secrets from your side?
I think with good reason, right? I mean, in the public markets, when you invest in a stock, most people who invest want certainty, and they want to know that they are repeatable and that they are accurate in what they're going to deliver.
Except if you're investing in Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, you even see sometimes in the stock market, like a company says that they will make a certain number, and they actually go over that number, and then the stock price goes down. And it seems so counterintuitive, but it just shows that the reason it goes down is because it shows to the investors that the management don't have a good handle on what's actually happening in their business, which I always found very, very counterintuitive. I was like, well, you've done better than you thought. Why the stock price should go up? But if it goes, if it's too far away from what they predicted, then it's the kind of accuracy of the prediction that's in question, rather than the performance of the company. I always found that strange, but it can happen, and it does happen.
Is there any secrets or any best practices you can share? Like how can you like assure a revenue forecasting that is accurate? Like what's some advice from your side here?
Yeah, I think I would say don't be single-threaded in your approach. And what I mean by that is we always say selling is a team sport. Well, forecasting, in my opinion, should also be a team sport. If you are just taking the perspective of the account exec and the sales manager only, then you don't have a whole picture of the account, right? A good example would be if you're trying to sell an upsell into an existing customer. Okay, what does the customer success manager think? What is the health of the account? How many support tickets have they raised in the last month? Unhappy customers very rarely buy more from you. So if you're forecasting an upsell and you didn't in an existing customer and you didn't involve your customer success people in that assessment, you're missing a part of the puzzle, right? And I would say the same on new deals, right? If you're forecasting a new deal, what does your pre-sales team think about deal, right? Do they think that the technical complexity is achievable? Will we provide value which is differentiated from the competition? Will the, just bring in as more people into the deal that have a perspective on the deal that's valuable, right?
Yeah.
You don't want your forecast call to have 900 people on it, of course, but you need to try and bring in different voices as well as just the salespeople.
Yeah. How do you assure that there's that your team is spending their time wisely on the right deals? I think that's another big question I had back then, is how you do select the deals, because if you just go for the big ones, you might fail as well, because this is maybe just inexperienced salesperson putting in some big numbers. So how do you assure that they actually spend their time wisely?
It's a good question. I think you have to. I think first of all, you have to have a good qualification framework. There's no disguising a good qualification framework, right? And you have to trust that the account executive, and even before that, if the lead is coming from a BDR team, that they are experienced in terms of knowing which types of deals we should be pursuing and not pursuing.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult sometimes when you get into a deal, and especially at the moment when the economic times can be quite tough and people's pipeline can look a little bit less full than they would like. It really takes courage to say, no, we will not work on that deal. We should qualify out. It's not a good use case for us, because if you have very little to work on elsewhere, you feel like you should try and keep it and move it along, but you know when a deal's not gonna go anywhere, and that's really tough. But you have to have that courage sometimes, which is very difficult to do.
One of the hardest skills to be learned in sales is saying no to a customer.
Yeah, exactly, right? And saying, I don't think this is a fit. I don't think we're going to do it. But actually, it can be a good tactic. If you tell a customer that, and they select themselves back in, and they say, no, I really think we should work with you, then you have a new data point, which is that the demand is strong, right? If you try to qualify out and they say, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, then already that deal wasn't going to happen, right? Because they were looking for a way out just as much as you were in some ways.
Yeah, sometimes they're not. They don't want to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking to trends in pre-sales, David. I mean, you also have a bit of experience the last couple of years already in working in pre-sales. How did the role evolve, and what do you see up next? What's the next thing that affects pre-sales team? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I started in pre-sales, over 10 years ago now, and I think the role has evolved in my time in pre-sales from, the technical expert in the sales team, the kind of geek in the corner stereotype, to really a properly, value-led, business-led professional, which I think is fantastic, right? You have to always have that technical skill and I would say technical curiosity, really. If you are the type of person who always likes to know how things are built, they when you were a kid, you like taking your toys apart and figuring out how they worked and things like that. And you're probably going to be pretty good at this job. You don't have to know everything. You're not a developer, right? But what you have to be able to do is quickly figure things out and quickly figure out how things work, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, but really the business acumen is the part of the job that I've seen grow the most in the last 10 years. I think the biggest trend that will affect pre-sales in the future from now is really the rise of this category of buyer enablement technology and the way that we're going to use that. So, a lot of people now, they don't want to go through the old school, fill in a form, get a qualification call, get a discovery call, and only on the third call do you actually speak to the pre-sales person who shows you a demonstration, right? obviously these are valuable activities in some sense, but people will want to go much further through their research and much further through their buying journey, if you like, before they ever talk to somebody. And I think pre-sales people have a really big role to play in this way of thinking. And we can help them by, there's a huge demand on my team to produce video content these days, which is quite unique. Well, not unique, but quite new. Can you produce a 3 to 4 minute video showcasing the value of something specific? I mean, that's a classic question we get all the time. We're also looking at obviously lots of things like more experiential things like product tours that you could take so that you can get a look and feel for what the product is like without actually having to like sign up and get a trial and all this kind of stuff. And those type of experiences, I think, are going to become more and more prevalent. So, ironically, I think the pre-sales team might also have a bigger role in marketing than it ever did, because we are the people who really know the value and how to explain the value in that kind of context, in a demo or kind of an experiential piece of content like that. So I think that's going to change the profession quite a lot. I don't think it will be that long before you see people with like video editing skills being required in pre-sales and things like that, which is very interesting.
We had like a product marketing team at Pleo, and I think that was also something I haven't seen in other companies before that. But it's exactly what you described. Like they were like very like much driven on how can we like explain our product as simple as possible, and then like also creating the content behind that. So it basically were exactly what you just described. But I think it will be like something like this, like a something between sales, marketing, and customer success, and bringing the pieces together. Some kind of also connecting the customer. I think that's a super interesting point you brought up.
Pre-sales teams have always been quite connected to product management because obviously they have a lot of feedback from customers and prospects, which the product managers want, and vice versa. But I think the collaboration between pre-sales and product marketing is going to only increase because in the past, the traditional way is that product marketing produced the value and the positioning for the product, and pre-sales kind of take that on board and use that, and it's like we just use the output of what they create. But I think it's going to become much more of a two-way street in terms of pre-sales being the contributors to the way that we actually market the product, in my opinion.
I think it's super interesting also for myself, because now I'm like in entrepreneur position since 1 year, and I'm taking the buyer perspective more. So it's like I'm looking for tools, and I'm also of course checking like how do they actually do the demo, and what kind of questions they ask, because I'm just curious. And what I feel like it's so interesting because as you just mentioned, like some have like this very structured approach. It's like first the SDR, then the AE coming, then there's account manager or sales engineer in the call, and sometimes it feels like they're not listening, right? So it's like you're telling them exactly what you want, and like I might already like know what I want because I have like done the research. I was checking out different websites and stuff, so I exactly know what I want. And I tell them in the first call, and then it still takes like 4 calls until I get to it. And then, of course, like it comes back to the revenue forecasting. They might think, okay, this is a great client because he's ticking all the boxes. But I feel like, okay, they don't listen. So I think like, closing this gap between what the customer actually wants and what he was trying to get on information already beside the call or outside the call is like really important then, because other than that, you just have like this one single opinion on the deal. And I think also AI plays a huge role in the future when it comes to revenue forecasting, like especially like having the right data. Because
I mean, if you have the Gartner study, I forget the percentage. It seems to go up every time I read the statistic, but it's something like 80% of people, 80% of the selling process or the buying process is done without you even being present, right?
Yes.
And I think AI has a huge role to play in understanding the signals from what people are doing. Like, so when they're doing their research on your website or via some content that you've sent them or whatever that might be, how are they interacting with it? How often do they read it? Do they share it? Do they use it? And then also when you have those meetings, right, the conversational intelligence aspect of looking at those meetings and AI generating signals from that, I think that's all part of forecasting, or should be part of forecasting, right? It's if you're only looking at the 20% that you see, like, are you really forecasting accurately? Because there's 80% that you don't see and you don't know what's going on, right? Or maybe you do, but it's in a silo somewhere that you don't access, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, I think you will never get to 100% because sometimes people just talk to other people, like let's say on a networking conference, right? So you will never have this like 100% accuracy about what people actually know about your product. But I think what is also super valuable is like, if you look at the call, like a demo, the actual demo, and like using this data is like when I'm receiving like the customer say something for like 20 minutes, what I'm actually taking is like 20 to 30% of what he was actually saying. But if you use AI, you have like all the data and like very big data packages that you can actually put into the CRM and then also have like a better forecasting in the future, I think.
Yeah. And I think to pick up on a point that you just made, I think this is one of the big skills of pre-sales is sometimes to, like you say, when you say that people aren't listening, is really listen and sometimes just show them what they want to see, right? And you meet them where they are, and you could have because it's a give to get, in my opinion, right? If you want to know something very specific about the product and I know that information, okay, I just show you the information, but then I have kind of earned your trust and I can say, okay, but then I can ask you more discovery questions. Then I can get more information. There might be a better way to do the thing that you want to do, and I can advise you on that. But I need to meet you where you are. I can't just say, well, tell me everything about yourself, and only then will I be able to show you the solution, right? It's not how, it's not like how a friendship is created, If I were to ask you 20 questions before I decided if I wanted to, even have a friendly conversation with you, that would be so unnatural and so strange.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yet in a business context, we decide that it's perfectly normal. I think that's a bit weird, right?
Absolutely.
People, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said, because it's like exactly what you described. It's like in the end, what you want is like you want to have more information to like do the discovery, what you just mentioned. But first you have to earn the trust of the customer, because otherwise it feels like very awkward, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree on that one.
David, we're already recording half an hour, so we're coming to an end to the episode. But I have one last question for you, because it's also about you as a person in my podcast. And I would like to ask you, what is your personal advice for people listening to the podcast? What have influenced you the most in your career? It could be a framework, could be a book, something like a habit you gain. So what is something you would like to share with our audience here?
Yeah, great question. I'm quite a big believer in reading. It sounds like a strange thing to say, and not just for the sake of it, but I do also have run for several years a kind of an online book club with another friend of mine, Steve Bullington, because I think it's a good professional development item, and it's something that I like to do for a few reasons, right? It brings a perspective that you don't usually see. So often when you're at work, you're quite clouded by the way that your company likes to do things, the way that your role is structured, and it's harder to look above that sometimes and get new ideas. And I think, reading a general interest book or even a fiction book, it brings you a level above the day-to-day and allows your mind a little bit of space to expand. So I would say that's a really good thing to do. But I would say be careful, right? I read quite a lot of books, and if you just take exactly what these business books or self-help books say and just apply it directly verbatim into your life, it's a pretty terrible thing to do. You need to really adjust, take maybe one or two key ideas from those from a book like that, bring that perspective to your work, and I think that's a really good way to do things. Yeah,
I love that. I'm not a big reader, but I like audiobooks, so I can at least 50%.
Audiobooks are good. Yeah. Or you get an Audible subscription or whatever, Spotify books. I don't know what they do, but yeah, it's pretty good. I'm very old school. I like to actually have a physical book, which is a bit silly because I should have like a Kindle or something. But yeah,
No, but I feel you on that point. It's always nice to have it.
Yeah, definitely.
David, it was really nice to talk to you today. For those who missed your session at Artist Circus this year, are they actually going to meet you again next year? Is this already something you can tell?
Yeah, of course. I love the Artist Circus. I thought it was a fantastic event, and not to big you up too much, but I thought it was a really, really great conference. So I'll definitely be back next year for 100%.
Cool. That's amazing to hear. And nothing left to say from my side. Thanks a lot for being my guest today. It was a great discussion on revenue forecasting, and hope to see you soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.